Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Guys Who Stare at Stats. Cade Kennedy with you alongside Tyler Riggs. And Tyler, not the 3-day window we obviously thought we were going to get with the college football playoff, but what a fun 3 days of football we had. You got some, I don't know if you technically call them upsets. We had more competitive games. That's what everyone wanted to see. We wanted to see more competitive football. We absolutely got that. What a great window of games we had.
Yeah, it's college football playoff. You expect it to deliver. And like I said, I think it definitely did, right? Some very, um, I wouldn't quite go as far as shocking results, but some real interesting results and some good competition, some good games. And now you're down to that final four, and that ought to be interesting yet again and see who really is the best in the country.
Absolutely. As always, before we get into everything real quick, feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below. It only takes a minute or two out of your day, but we do sincerely appreciate it. Now, Tyler, we've got to get to, of course, the game that ended about an hour ago as of the recording this. Notre Dame beating Georgia, and not just beating Georgia, just you look at the score and it doesn't really tell the whole tale of this, because this was a Notre Dame defensive show. This was the special team showing up for the Fighting Irish. This was one of those games that the stats don't really do it justice. The main way to look at it, you can look at the quarterback duel up here. Riley Leonard, only 90 yards through the air, 15 for 24, had the one TD. Gunnar Stockton, 20 for 32, 234 and a touchdown. You look at the team stats, and this looks like even more of an anomaly. Georgia didn't have 300 yards of offense, but they still had a decent amount compared to Notre Dame's 244. Georgia did have the 2 turnovers. Notre Dame winning the time of possession battle in a, competitive there, 31-28. Nothing too crazy to look at there. Some of those factors you can kind of usually determine if one team's better than the other. But really what this all stood out to me is this one stretch of the game. And everyone's going to tell you this is exactly what it was. Right before the end of the first half, going into the start of the third quarter, Notre Dame getting the 48-yard field goal, which Mitch Jeter, by the way, great game for him, had struggled earlier in the year, came up clutch when he absolutely had to last week against Indiana, and now this week against Georgia as well. So shout out to him. And then the Georgia fumble. And once that Georgia fumble happens, we go from 6-3. Notre Dame's probably going to, this is going to be a tight defensive game. It stayed that way. But you get, I don't want to say a free touchdown, because Georgia's defense is still difficult after all. But you get a touchdown there. Jaden Harrison runs the opening kickoff to start the third quarter. It's 20-3 out of nowhere. Momentum has completely flipped in the game. And it really felt like, at least to me, and I'm sure a lot of people will find this kind of controversial, after that touchdown happened, it felt like this game's over. Notre Dame's going to find a way to win no matter what. I know a lot of people are going to disagree, but the way momentum felt, the way Notre Dame's defense had played, Georgia was going to get their passing yards. That was the only thing they could do. They could not run the ball to save their life.
Yeah, it was a great job by that Notre Dame front because, we had talked about it a little bit, right? Could you put the game on Gunnar Stockton's shoulders if you're Notre Dame? Um, and if you're Georgia, could you get him some relief? I'll say this for Gunnar Stockton, regardless of the loss. I thought, despite all that, he played pretty well, right? Just the circumstances at hand, no run game, like you mentioned. His line wasn't great in terms of uh, letting him get hit a few times. All that factored in, and Notre Dame looked like the team, Cade, we had seen after that, and we talked about a lot that, hey, this team has completely changed it around. They're not always going to win pretty, but they're going to go out, they're going to get it done, however they have to do it. And that was the theme here again today. Some of those big momentum plays, like I said, were really a difference. That stretch right there at the end of the first half, that was massive. That really gave that control to Notre Dame, no question about it. And they did a good job to use that in the second half to continue to kind of force their game onto Georgia, say, hey, we're going to play this a certain style, and you're not going to be able to do much about it. So kudos to Marcus Freeman, that Notre Dame bunch. This was a big win, for the program, right? And for Marcus Freeman, this, we had talked about, this might be Notre Dame's probably biggest win of the 2000s. It's incredible what they've been able to do with this team of all teams.
Yeah, and it was the thing that, we talked about that a little bit When's the last time you've seen Notre Dame rise to the occasion in a game like this? That was
Yeah.
the question we had on the pregame show. That was everything that, everyone wanted to see. That was the big question. And then you go into, okay, it's 20-3. And there was still that doubt that I saw. Everyone's like, okay, how is Notre Dame going to choke this game away? And then when Georgia makes it 20-10 and you start to feel that pressure come on, Notre Dame's defense was not going to lose this game. That was just not going to happen. Fourth down stop after fourth down stop. I know there was the questionable pass interference that I don't really know how it was questionable. You can't not turn around and just try to tackle a guy. I get that the ball was underthrown, but still, that's the way the law works there. But Notre Dame's defense, 4 sacks. You had mentioned it. Georgia's offensive line not playing well. Notre Dame's D line gets a bit of credit there. I know ESPN was trying to put hey, Georgia's offensive line's 50 pounds heavier than the front 7. How are they going to compete with this? They did a pretty darn good job, I'd say. They've made Gunnar Stockton uncomfortable at times. You could see it that first drive of the game, bringing pressure, got him to fumble the ball. Notre Dame played a little bit too aggressive on special teams early on, but that's who they've been this entire season. They've been aggressive on special teams. Notre Dame, I mean, just a monumental win for them. And you talk about a team that lost to Northern Illinois at the beginning of the year. Everyone completely evaporated on any idea of how good Notre Dame was going to be. Everyone just completely went, okay, Notre Dame's a non-factor, on with the rest of the season. And here they are, all the way back. Now they're going to be playing Penn State in the semifinal and the Orange Bowl. That's going to be a fun game. And you had mentioned it a bit with Marcus Freeman. Just what a win for the program, and what some gutsy decisions he had in this game. The punt switch, where you bring the punting team on, you switch the offense
man.
back out, you force the offside. Just unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was seeing when he did that. I mean, that is a gutsy call to do down there inside your own 20. I mean, just the will to win. Notre Dame has it. And that's something that I haven't seen in a Notre Dame team in a long time that they have this year. And that's what really makes this Irish team so special.
Yeah, and you had touched on it a second ago, right? When's the last time we'd seen Notre Dame rise to the occasion? In my lifetime, I don't know if I've seen it like this, for them to step up in this fashion. So really, yeah, I'd be happy if you're a Notre Dame fan on that side of it, right? To see this team be able to go do that and just enforce their will. That's something that Georgia in the past has been able to do to other teams in these situations. Say, hey, we're going to play our game, and you're going to have to deal with that. To see Notre Dame come out and do that to an SEC team, not going to lie, got a little bit of enjoyment from that one.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't want to be that guy, but Indiana did put 17 points on Notre Dame.
Yeah,
Georgia only had 10. Georgia had 3 in the first half. Indiana had 3 in the first. I don't want to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy.
If we're looking at results.
Yeah, I would say, if we did a bowl reaction video, this would get a lot worse in terms of dunking on the SEC, which we're not going to go there yet. I'm saving that at least for a different game we're going to get to eventually. But just what an impressive win for Notre Dame. I think that should be the main takeaway. A lot of people are going to have their fun with the SEC is in a down year, SEC is bad, whatever narrative you want to come from. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying the main takeaway from this should be this is a legitimate Notre Dame team. They have made that case now to everybody, even the non-believers coming into this thing.
Yeah, and I think that's lessons we need to take from these games. We were talking about pre-show a little bit. We've seen, and we joked about it a little bit, that, hey, I'm sure everybody will have normal takes. Yeah, that's kind of fallen by the wayside, right? No surprise there where people are just, oh, Ashton Genty's a fraud, and we'll get to that later. But it's like, at some point, we got to realize that, this, and we've talked about it throughout the season, this is a year of really good parity, right? But the portals kind of help that. NIL's leveled that playing field more than people I think, where you get a Notre Dame that's able to build up and get some real key pieces. For those elite teams, it puts them right in the fold. In a year where anything can almost happen, we've kind of seen that, and it's been fun to watch. It's delivered, I think, so far in the college football playoff, the format. I kind of hope they really don't change it. I think, and we've talked about this, where you should be rewarded for winning your conference championship in some sense, more than, hey, okay, you're in the playoff, right? So I think that first round bye has done what it's supposed to do and added a lot of intrigue.
Absolutely. And the other thing to go with that, every team that had a bye is out. We
Yeah.
talked about that a little bit, that rest versus rust. We've seen that happen in basketball sometimes in some other sports when you have a bye or things like that. I don't know if that's really the main indicator here, but it's definitely going to spark a little bit of discussion. And the other thing, every conference champion is out. Every single team that won that conference championship game is gone. Under the old rules, we would have had Oregon and Georgia and then two other teams, and that would have been your semifinal. Or even in the old BCS era, we would have had Oregon, Georgia, let's settle this thing. And we're not going to see it. And I think that's the other beautiful thing of this. I'm not going to say it's like basketball because football and basketball is such a giant gap, but you can see a team get hot and make a run. And that's going to be what we talk about in this next game, Tyler, the Rose Bowl, because I think, and it's now clear to say, and it's kind of bad coming right off the Notre Dame game, who's hotter than Ohio State right now?
Oh
41 to
man.
21, just smacking Oregon. You want to talk about statement game? We thought that was against Tennessee. This is a bigger statement game. 34 nothing. Arguably a play, not arguably, it was a play away from 34 nothing at halftime. Oregon was able to at least get 8 on the board. But man, I mean, you want to talk about just pounding someone. You want to talk about revenge game. You want to talk about whatever statement you could have said for Ohio State there. You want to quiet everybody. This is the way to do it. Go to Pasadena, blow out the number one team in the country, the only undefeated team left, and the team that beat you by 1 point earlier in the year. This is the way to do it. Ohio State, no turnovers for either side, lost the time of possession by a minute, but all that doesn't matter when you have 500 yards of offense and your opponent only has 276.
Yeah, this is an Ohio State team. Who would have thought? I know we talked about this going in, but what a what a absolute wonder a month could do. And we forget sometimes these guys are humans. They're not robots. They're not just going to fold up, pack it away, and say we're done here. Um, it's a kudos to Ryan Day. It's kudos to all the players to say, you know what, we're going to shut out that outside noise. We're going to come out. We're going to do our thing, and we're going to be the team we believe that we can be. And they've looked, I mean, just you can tell me these are the same players that lost to Michigan. I mean, they're just not. There's something different. I just, it's incredible to witness. And they had Oregon legitimately stumped. I think that was the most shocking thing. It's not shocking they won, Cade, but the manner in which they did it. You thought that, like you said, we thought Tennessee was the statement game. No, this was a statement. I mean, 34 nothing that first half till Oregon scores late in the half. That was crazy. I couldn't believe it.
I mean, the other thing to take away from this, just kind of going back to the pregame show, what we had said, Travion Henderson, could he beat his performance of what he did the first time up there in Eugene? The answer is yes. 8 carries, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. But now Quinshaw Judkins had a big game, 17 carries, 85 yards. Will Howard stepped up, no mistakes really, 17 for 26. Yeah, you could say, well, that's not amazing, but a QBR of 97.7, Tyler. I mean, he played nearly as flawless of a game as you could. Jeremiah Smith, of course, anyone's going to have a great QBR. I could go out there never playing a snap of football in my life, and if I know I could at least throw it 2 yards to Jeremiah Smith, I know he's got me.
Yeah,
I know
it's
he's
yeah,
going. I know we're getting
absolutely.
the first down. He is that good of a receiver, and man, it's the same thing with we've talked about Ryan Williams a lot this year for Alabama. Jeremiah Smith, he's going to be in that same draft class with him, Tyler. Not to already preview what we're going to talk about in our 2027 NFL draft video, but that's going to happen in that conversation there. Emeka Buka, great game from him. This Ohio State team, I don't want to tip my hand already, but I mean, they play like this. I don't think anyone could stop them, which is crazy to say
Well,
because there's a
and-
lot of good teams. But when you come out
yeah,
and dominate like that, my goodness.
yeah. I mean, how could you not get bought into it? This is a team that's all of a sudden very dangerous. Uh, and the talent, like you see it, right? This is what they sunk $20 million into reportedly for NIL. This is what the Ohio State fans had envisioned. This team is it. So you've got to continue that. You got to continue to be big time. Um, and there's no reason not to. You feel it seems like they figured it out. Now you just got to keep rolling with it. And you got to dare people to, stop you from playing your game. The aggressive Ohio State that we've seen against Tennessee, and against Oregon is the team where it's like, where has this been? I mean, this should have been from the jump, been refreshing. I know for Ohio State fans to see that. Now you got to keep living up to that. Go into each game with that type of confidence. And if somebody finds a way to stop you, hey, kudos to them. They earned it.
And by the way, just to add to this, we talked so much about Ohio State's offense. Congratulations. If you were a person that existed yesterday, even if you got up from your couch to the fridge or something like that, you had more rushing yards than Oregon did. Oregon had negative 23 rushing yards. Best player was Jordan James, 2 yards a carry, 7 carries, 14 yards. Dylan Gabriel, I don't want to say he struggled because 29 for 41, 299, 2 TDs is not a bad stat line. But there were moments where he just looked confused. Ohio State was throwing different looks at him that he hadn't seen. And I want to give credit to this Ohio State defense because, you talk about guys who have just been absolutely ever putting the stats up on the screen so you could look at it. This is a crazy Ohio State team. I don't know if I could really put the words to it to describe how insane they can be when fully operational. You just need to look at that half they played, that first half. That tells you everything you need to know. That is who Ohio State can be. That is who Ohio State fans want them to be at all times. Obviously, it's not going to happen. These are 18 to 22-year-olds we're talking about. But when Ohio State puts everything together, they look like a monster. And I don't know who's happier, though, about this. Michigan fans for saying, hey, we beat them, and we got to go 8-5 and beat Alabama and have an amazing year. If you're Ohio State, this is going to sound sacrilegious, I know, but are you kind of okay that you lost that Michigan game if you knew that this was going to get unlocked as a reason of losing that? Does that sit with you somewhat or not? I really don't know. I'd love to hear from Ohio State fans in the comments about that, but it's kind of a
I think
win-win for both of them.
Yeah, it's beyond. I think that's beyond, just Ohio State, Michigan. Obviously, you could argue that's the biggest rivalry in the country. A lot of people will tell you that is, and I'm not necessarily going to disagree with them. I mean, I know we're OU guys, but hey, that's a big deal,
It
right? Ohio
is.
State, Michigan. Um, but right, it comes to your rival, right? Would you rather lose to your rival every year and be able to go win a national championship? I mean, that's a tough question
It
to
is.
answer. But I think if you're an Ohio State fan right now, clearly that Michigan loss was what this team needed to be able to say, hey, we've got to level up our game. So you take it. If it leads to that, good. You don't like to see the loss, but hey, if it's going to lead to this, you're just going to grin and say, all right, well, hey, clearly it's what was needed.
Absolutely. It's one of those weird things, but hey, sometimes college football is a weird sport. Things work out this way.
That's right.
But the next game to get to, you want to talk about college football being a weird sport. I can think of no weirder stretch or better stretch, depending on who you are, you're going to find in any game other than the Peach Bowl that happened. You talk about the game of all games, one of the better playoff games we've had in a while, dare I say, and that goes back to Michigan, Alabama, and the Rose Bowl. That goes back to the Ohio State, Georgia Peach Bowl a few years ago. I went back through because I was bored since there was no Sugar Bowl last night, obviously due to the sad things that happened in New Orleans, but other things like that. If you look at the college football games that have happened in the Peach Bowl since we've had the New Year Six era, Texas and Arizona State was easily top two. It was either this or that Georgia-Ohio State 42-41 madness game where Ohio State misses the field goal right at New Year's Eve becoming New Year's Day. It's
See,
one.
that was a personal favorite for me just because of our good friend Trent Caldwell, big Ohio State fan.
Yeah.
Boy, what a tough way to start a new year.
Yeah,
Uh,
I could not think of a more brutal way to start it. But this game had to be up there.
oh yeah,
Texas, Arizona State, all you really need to know to look at this is the win probability chart where it goes back and forth, where, Texas had a 99.9% chance to win, which I feel like that's almost a curse now more than anything else. Anytime I hear that, I'm like, oh, well, things are going to go haywire now. You can't have that happen. But just the madness that happened in this game. Arizona State controlled time of possession, had it for nearly 38 minutes, had 510 in terms of total yards compared to Texas's 375. And this is a game that looked like it was going to get out of hand. Texas scores early, gets a 3 and out, has a 75-yard punt return. It's 14-3. Texas is going on long drives. They're shutting Arizona State down. It's 17-3 at halftime. Arizona State's continuing to struggle in the red zone. They get stuffed again on 4th and goal because people keep trying to test Texas's D tackles. Don't do that. Please don't. It's not going to go well for you. It really isn't. Unless you're Arizona State, because then you have a fumble exchange and Arizona State gets a safety out of it. Sets up a 7-minute drive for a field goal. We had an amazing 17-8 score because, of course we did, Tyler. It's a playoff game. Why wouldn't we have a weird score? It's Arizona State. It's the Big 12, the Conference of Chaos, doing their thing, and it all starts when Texas goes up 24-8. If you just take the game from that point onward, every chaotic thing you could have imagined happened. It was that kind of game. Arizona State rallies back, ties the thing up off a Cam Scattaboo pass, because it's Cam Scattaboo. He can do everything. We've talked about that I don't know how many times this season. If you watched our videos, we can't say enough good things about the guy. And he makes this a 24-16 game. Texas throws an interception. Quinn Ewers, we've talked about this, the untimely turnovers, the, dare I say, anti-clutch factor he has sometimes. Arizona State, Cam Scattaboo, once again, big reception this time, gets him down in the red zone, plus a face mask penalty. Arizona State ties it up, and then Texas missing 2 field goals in the final 5 minutes of the game. The controversial non-targeting that a lot of people felt should have happened. I think it was a targeting penalty personally. I'm also biased a little bit, but I do think it was a targeting that should have been called. I don't know if Arizona State would have won the game there, though, with how shaky their field goal kicking has been all season. If they would have even gotten in range, I don't want to say, definitively that cost Arizona State the game, because you still had a chance to win it in overtime, had a 4th and 13, could not get it. Matthew Golden gets a great reception. We go to double overtime. Texas holds on and wins the game. Truly a fantastic game, though, Tyler.
It was. It was a lot of fun. And Texas, showed their strengths in that first half, but also in the second half, you saw their warts, right? You touched on it with Quinn Ewers and those mistakes. And how about the Cam Scattaboo legacy game? Can't we give it up for Cam Scattaboo?
We can.
Probably, look, I think he's been the most fun player to watch in the country this season. You could argue best, whatever. I'm not going to go that, but God, he's been a lot of fun to watch. And he does it again, nearly gets it done for him. Kudos to Arizona State. I know the loss sucks, but man, the Big 12 needed that. They needed that game to kind of quell some of the hate they were getting from the national side. So Texas, in the end, did what we thought they were going to do, where they just had enough. But they've got to figure it out, because I would say going in, Cade, the interesting point of this, are they not the weakest team of the 4, you think?
I mean, here's the 2 things I want to throw at you. Number 1, Texas's rushing attack. 30 carries for 53 yards. That's not going to cut. That barely saved them in this game because Contravion Wisner was good enough, but there was no Arch Manning play calls. There's no package for him like we'd seen in the past few games. This is a Texas team that, they live and die by their wide receivers. They really do. Matthew Golden played phenomenal. Gunnar Helm had the big touchdown, of course, to put this thing away in double overtime. They used Contravion Wisner to catch a few passes out there. Texas's receiving core determines how good they are, which is crazy to say with an amazing defense they have, with good running game. Quinn Ewers cannot be the guy to win you the game. He can throw the passes, but he cannot single-handedly win you the game. Some of that, he got injured earlier in the year. Not going to put all of it on him. But you saw what happens to Texas. That I don't want to say they're a team that can get easily rattled still, but when you have every ability to put this game away, they just couldn't. And when you let a team like Arizona State, who's used waves of momentum how many times this year, that just they have that big run where it's coming. Cam Scattaboo's going to make a play at some point. He's not going to be put away forever. You let him beat you with his arm, of all things. And now it's a game. And because Texas can't run the ball because they become so one-dimensional, you're trusting Quinn Ewers to put the game away. He throws a deep ball into double coverage. It gets intercepted. All momentum's with Arizona State. It truly did feel like, and then Bert Auburn misses a field goal, by the way. That happened too. I mentioned that. Once that happened, it felt like the game was over. It felt like, okay, the football gods have determined Arizona State is going to win the game now. It just truly felt like that. I don't know if you've got the same feeling that you had about it, but that's where I was at, that, oh, Texas is just not allowed to win this game. They wasted their time. They wasted the entire second quarter because they can't run the ball, and everything's designed for Quinn Ewers to throw it to someone. If you can't run the ball against Arizona State, who, keep in mind, did have the best rushing defense in the Big 12, how are you going to run the ball on Ohio State? How are you going to run it on Penn State or Notre Dame if you get that far? You cannot be this one-dimensional going into a semifinal. Texas, I don't want to say they got lucky because they are a very talented team. That's not, luck had nothing to do with this. Texas was the better team at the end of the day. But man, they showed that if a one-man wrecking crew, granted one of the best ones you'll see, can do that, I'm terrified to see what Ohio State could do to them if Ohio State brings their A game they had been.
Yeah, I mean, Texas, like I said, I think the biggest thing is they've got to be more than one dimensional. I mean, of the four teams, they're the ones that have the weakest points,
Yes.
in terms of just the flaws. That's where I'm at with it. And this game highlighted that. That's a credit partly to Arizona State again. Can't undersell what they did. But on paper, this game should have not been that close. When Texas is up 17-0, they should have been able to put it away. And the fact that they didn't was partly on them. And that's something that you've got to find a way to dig deep and correct before you get to that semifinal matchup.
Absolutely. And you only have a week to do it. You're going to be at home, basically. It's in Dallas. It's the Cotton Bowl. It's going to be what should be a home game for you. But Texas, a lot of soul searching to do. Final 2 points I want to make about this. The other thing about Texas getting easily rattled, the play calling at the end for Texas made no sense. I mean, on that first field goal where you're still, again, slinging the ball, trying to throw it to someone, going to leave Arizona State time. Why? I mean, I get that you can't run the ball well, but you're just trying to get settled. I did not understand what Texas was trying to do there. And then, of course, Bert Auburn, he's got to do some soul searching. You missed the 2 big clutch kicks there at the end. There's a lot Texas has to work on. Just so much that they have to fix in a crazy short amount of time, just like you would any other week. And that's one of the things I like about having this playoff extended out the way it is. You don't get a month to sit on this and go, oh, well, we get a week and a half now after this game or something like that. You've got 1 week to fix everything. They come out and play your A game against Ohio State. And the other thing to add on this was really the second best team in the SEC. Really?
Right.
What, Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, what happened? How did you all, well, none of you played Texas. That's why this happened.
Right, hey, say right. What happened?
What happened? What in the world happened that this Texas team was a play or 2 away from walking in and winning the SEC year 1? A Texas team that, I'd said before, I think is worse than Texas's team they had last year. That was a really good Texas team. I don't understand what in the world went on with the SEC this year. The Big Ten is clearly the better conference. And my goodness, if Arizona State would have beat Texas, you would never hear the end of it from Big 12 fans. You would never hear the end of it of the Big 12 champ. So. Yeah, rightfully so. But the Big 12 champ knocking out Texas a year after they leave the conference, people would have gotten into near fist fights on social media. It would have been beautiful to see. It would have been very chaotic. It was already chaotic. But my goodness, just a down year for the SEC for sure. And this is a future video. I don't know where the SEC is going to be looking after this.
Well, I think one of probably the shocking parts of it, right, with the NIL, is that the Big Ten beat them in the NIL game.
They did.
There's better talent, top to bottom, on the Ohio State and Oregon rosters because of the NIL. And, for all and I think it exposes, we're SEC guys. We're dogging on the conference that our team's in because there's a clear bias there when it comes to the SEC, right? Part of that is they've earned it. They've been so good for so long. It's hard not to say, oh, well, they're the SEC. It's different because that is true. I mean, it has been. But this is where NIL has leveled the playing field. You get these big pocket donors, and Michigan's going to get some of that effect. I know Michigan this year wasn't great, but with how they finished the year, beating Ohio State, you've got a top quarterback in Bryce Underwood expected to do big things. Like, watch out for Michigan next year to come back and be really, really good. Would not surprise me. So it is fascinating because I think the SEC is finally realizing, okay, this is a new world. It's truly kind of a wild, wild west.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Lane Kiffin. I have nowhere else to put this. So, shout out to Lane Kiffin on Twitter, actively cheering for every blowout to happen just to watch Alabama and South Carolina lose their bowl games. Amazing. I have nowhere else to put this, so I'm just going to put it in here right now. You know me, I'm not an SEC chest thumper by any means of the imagination, but it's funny to see like this. And Arizona State, can't say it enough. You hate to lose any game, especially a playoff game, but man, what a season they had. From 3-9 to 11-3 and a Big 12 title. Truly one of the most fun teams you'll see in a season like this. All credit goes to them. They played their hearts out.
If you're not jealous of Arizona State having a Kenny Dillingham, right, as a head coach, you don't know ball. Because that guy, I would run through a wall for him.
Yeah, I want
right
to kill
now.
Kenny Dillingham right now, Tyler.
Yeah, yeah. Give me that guy. He's the dude. He's a legit coach, and he's about to get a big pay raise from what's been reported as far as his contract, and he deserves every bit of it.
Absolutely.
I mean, that place was a dumpster fire when Herm Edwards left it. He left it in just for debt, and it was incredible. By the way, you mentioned Lane Kiffin. To his credit, he is, as we're recording, the Gator Bowl is going on. He is taking care of business right now. He's 17-7 over Duke.
I don't know if that's going to make things funnier or worse. That he's the only one. That Lane Kiffin is the only one that performed well in his bowl game.
Oh
man.
Yeah.
Well, the final one to get to, we kind of, speaking of social media, I think this is the perfect thing to cap it off with. The Fiesta Bowl, Penn State and Boise State. This was a game that you look at that score and you go, 31-14. You see that Ashton Jeanty has 30 carries for 104 yards. I want to address this right on hand. First things first. Anyone who says Ashton Jeanty is a terrible running back, what are you smoking? Just legitimately, have you watched any other games ever? Because if you're watching a guy who's trying to fight the Penn State D-line, his own offensive line that is getting pushed into him, and he still gets 100 yards, I don't care how many yards or carries it takes, that's still impressive. Just because he had a bad game against one of the best defensive lines in the sport does not mean he did not deserve to go to the Heisman ceremony. What are we doing here?
And by the way, bad game by his standards.
Yes.
Still a good game for most running backs. And let's rephrase it, right? If you're saying that Ashton Jeanty is a good back, but maybe wouldn't have been as good against big-time competition, or at least in a better conference, he would have had a lot better line at a better conference.
Absolutely.
No offense to the Boise State guys, but it was clear. And we've known this because Penn State, we talked about, one of the best front sevens in the country, if not the best in terms of just raw athleticism. That was on full display in this game. It really was. That was the story of the game. Penn State backed it up and did what they had to do, right? Controlled the line of scrimmage, made sure Jeanty didn't absolutely just run over you, and force the Boise State passing game to try to beat you, and they couldn't.
Absolutely. And I mean, you look at it here, Boise had more yards. That doesn't mean anything, though, because of the 4 turnovers that they had. It was like we said, an off game by Jeanty standards. Just when you have the 2 fumbles you get stuffed a few times, had a 26-yard run. That was about it. This game came down to, can Maddox Madsen beat Penn State by himself? That was Penn State's whole game plan. That should be everyone's game plan if you were going against Boise. And he could not do it. You add a few missed field goals in there. You add a touchdown that gets turned over. This was a lot closer than the score really indicates, but this also shows how good Penn State is. I mean, Drew Allen, look at his stats. He did not have a good game. 13 for 25, 171, still had the 3 touchdowns. Tyler Warren played great. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton just absolutely, literally carried this Penn State team to victory. Just a phenomenal 1-2 punch at running back that continues to just be absolutely just brutal. That's really the one word you could use to describe it. Just brutal. If you're a defense having to face up against those two, they're going to have an amazing time playing Notre Dame. That's going to be a really fun game. But for Boise State, I think just to kind of put this thing into perspective, they proved they belonged. They really did. I know people are going to look at that 31-14. They're going to say, oh, Boise, why were they the three, all that other stuff. And seeding's a whole nother discussion of people want to get rid of the automatic bye for top four conference champions. That's a whole nother debate. But Boise had a mission to prove that A, they belonged, and B, they had a puncher's chance to win this thing, which I think a lot of people believe they had. And they went out there and they didn't fold. They get down 14-0 in the first quarter, and they came back and made it a ball game.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta give them credit for that. No question. You wish it was a better game, all that good junk, but this is about what we expected, right? I mean, it just on paper is a great story was Boise State, but when you run into Penn State and what they had, I wasn't surprised. I mean, you're always hoping it's kind of like the Arizona State situation. You're hoping there's a way, but I would say Boise performed about as well as they could in the situation.
Yeah, and it's one of those, and I don't want to turn this into a, only talking about Boise thing. Penn State played great. They played a good game.
Oh, you gotta give
You
yes,
got to give credit to
absolutely.
Penn State. I don't want to turn this into the other thing where it's okay that I've seen where people are like, would you consider anything Penn State's done to be a big game yet? This is a good game for James Franklin. That's a guy who needs a
You
big
got the
win in
win.
his repertoire.
Yeah.
And it was a good win for him. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and do he has to, I don't want to push the goalposts on him either and say, oh, well, now he has to beat Notre Dame to prove that he's actually a good coach or something like that. It's a good win for Penn State. You gonna tell me a quarterfinal of a playoff game is not a good win? What are we doing here?
Well, and especially as dominant as they did it, right? I mean, they pretty much had Boise State frustrated all night. And I'll say this too. I know his completions weren't great. His QBR didn't look great, but if you could get what you got out of Drew Aller and that Tyler Warner connection against an Ohio State, hey, this Penn State team, of the four in terms of that, has as good a shot as anybody to be able to say, hey, we should be able to win this thing. Whether it's Notre Dame, they got to get past that. And then I said Ohio State because obviously we think Ohio State, not to tip the hat, like I said, but probably going to wind up in that championship game. So if you're
Yeah.
Penn State
We'll talk
and you
about
could
that
get some of
more when
that
we do our
balance,
semi prediction videos, which will be
yeah,
down the line here in a few days. But yeah, either way, it's going to be intriguing to say the absolute least. I'm excited to see how Penn State does. It's been a long time since Penn State's played Notre Dame. I think they said 2007. It's been a while. Penn State, that kind of same
mhm.
scenario where just it's been a long time since they've won a national title. It's been a long time since they've had this big of an opportunity to prove themselves. It's going to be a lot of fun, Tyler. I mean, this is going to be a truly chaotic year. We'd been preaching that almost, from the jump with Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame. But we've had so many wild things happen this season that it's kind of only fitting that chaos carried itself to these quarterfinals. And I expect it to continue in the semis and even the championship game. So kind of putting the final thoughts on this one, just, what a fun season it's been so far. All of these games were good. And that's really the one takeaway I want from that one Fiesta Bowl. Just that was still a fun game. That wasn't a pushover game by any means. Rose Bowl had its moments where Oregon had that ability to come back, make it a game a little bit. Peach Bowl, I don't need to explain the Peach Bowl one. It was a double overtime game. You're not going to top that. Notre Dame, Georgia was a good defensive game. If you enjoy those type of games, it was a fun one to watch as well. Notre Dame put on a special teams clinic. If you want to see good field goals and kickoff returns, Notre Dame's your team for that. They're good at defense. They're good at special teams. So, folks, as always, starting to wrap this thing up. Tyler, do you have any other final thoughts for this one?
Playoffs have delivered, man. Now we're to the real special part. I tell you what, it's going to be a big national championship. You think of these four teams left, any one of these teams that wins that national championship, it's going to mean a lot. They all have these storylines. Texas, are they finally back? Truly, Ohio State, man. If Ryan Day goes from hey, he's about to get fired to national champion in the span of about 2 months, wow, that's crazy.
Yes, the
Penn
Ryan
State, I
Day
mean
fire
James
talk is
Franklin,
done.
yeah. And if James Franklin wins it, wow, that would be incredible for him and Notre Dame. It would be, I mean, the biggest thing to happen for them since you know essentially World War II just about aired, right? So, incredible storylines ought to be a great time.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the finishing notes that I already saw. Of course, the shortest of the droughts of any of them is Ohio State. It's been a whole 10 years since they won a national title. I know that aggravates them a lot that it's been 10 years, but that's kind of crazy that that's the longest drought here. We don't have that, oh, they won the title a year or two ago and they're back again narrative this year. And then also for that Notre Dame Penn State game, probably we'll repeat it when we do the semifinal prediction video. First, guarantees us the first ever African American head coach to be in a national championship game. So that's going to be a fun storyline in and of itself to see which one of those two fun squads gets there. But Tyler, we'll have a lot more to get to when we get to those videos. So folks, if you made it this far, we do encourage you to hit the like button. If you made it this far, we surely hope you liked the video. It'd be kind of bad if you didn't. But as always, feel free to hit the notification bell and the subscribe button. Continue to be notified when new videos come out, because not only are we going to have college football, we're going to get into the NFL, we're going to get into the NBA, college basketball conference plays about to get going. And as always, feel free to leave your comments down below. Anything, that you can kind of take away from this game that we didn't touch on, or maybe wanted to add on to something else, keep the conversation going in the comments. We always do read those. And sometimes if you leave some, we will respond to them. We're not going to be just ignore you or anything like that. So folks, until next time, have a good one, everybody.